Hello, good evening, and welcome to this LFC Daytrippers special. I am your host, Gav, and with me I have Grizz and journalist David Lynch from the Evening Standard. This show will be about 45 minutes long. We're going to cover the CAS decision on Manchester City, the response of a couple of Premier League managers. We're going to talk about Liverpool's transfer strategy as the summer approaches, or we're in it, but the summer of the transfer window approaches. And also any questions that you may have, you can throw them in, and we will ask a few towards David and Grizz as the show goes on. David, you are extremely welcome. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Not too bad. How's things?
Good. We were talking off air beforehand, and I was asking you what it's like to be a correspondent for Liverpool for a newspaper. Let us know what it's like, and you can give us the good and bad.
Yeah, well, I launched straight into the bad, didn't I? I was moaning about people that wrote me on Twitter, which is probably a bit too negative. But no, apart from that, it is a phenomenal job. I'm so lucky to sort of follow this incredible team in particular up and down the country. And yeah, I mean, I worked for the club before I did this job, and the fact I've sort of followed this whole transformation of Klopp's been a bit of a privilege, really. They've just incredible football and great people involved, and yeah, it's everything you dream of, really.
It sounds it, especially at a time like this when, since Klopp's arrived, he's built something very special, and it's culminated in a Champions League win last season and a league title win this season. To be a supporter of it is amazing, but to be right there in front of it for the vast majority must be absolutely brilliant. Tonight, I'm going to start with the decision from CAS with regards to Man City and the 2-year ban that it was proposed that they were going to get. It's turned out the ban has been lifted and a 10 million fine has been imposed on Manchester City. Grizz, we've had like a little over 24 hours to kind of digest this news now. What are you making of it? Because there seems to be strong words coming from, Jose Mourinho has said, well, if you're guilty, you shouldn't pay £1. And if you're not guilty, you shouldn't have to pay £1. If you're guilty, what's going on? 10 million, what's going on? And Klopp has said, I think he said it's a bad day for football. What are you making of all this, Chris?
It's a bit of a drama, isn't it? And I don't think we've heard the end of it. I mean, I know there's a further report coming out tomorrow, which will sort of give us more insight. I think it was possibly unfair on reporters asking managers about the situation without possibly the managers or possibly anyone knowing about what was the ins and outs. I'm not an expert on it. That's the first thing. And so from our point of view, just as a layman, as a lay fan, it's not a surprise. Honestly, God, to sort of someone who hasn't investigated, hasn't looked into it, it's not a surprise. And that's the worst part of it, that we didn't expect, that we didn't have any trust in sort of this investigation to be sort of carried out and them being found guilty and the appeal decision to be sort of upheld. With regards to the fine, I've just sort of vaguely read up on it, and it seems to be the fine is for non-compliance. So it's more to do with I don't want to give it sort of a layman's example, but it's more to do with, not giving your books in, basically, or not showing your books when you're asked to, or not, every time sort of the governing bodies are asking for some information, it seems as though they didn't comply, as opposed to break rules per se. So I think there's a slight confusion in terms of, look, they were found guilty, but on appeal, they were found not guilty of breaking the rules, but they were still guilty of non-compliance. That's the understanding I've got. Of course, over to David, who'll have probably more insight than me. But that's straight away. But look, to us lay people, that's how it seems and how it's been interpreted.
Yeah, it is. That's a fair point in terms of it's hard for us to know more until obviously we get
David on mute.
Yeah. Oh.
No, I can hear him.
It's hard to sort of know more until we get those full reasonings for the decision coming out. That's going to tell us an awful lot in terms of what CAS agreed with in terms of UEFA's charge. I thought that the interesting part of it in terms of what they said was obviously that the part that the fine was for the non-compliance was interesting in terms of it makes you ask the question, well, why weren't City complying? If they didn't agree with the rules in the first place, why did they sign up to them? If this compliance was a sort of way to push back on that, then it wasn't probably the best way to go around it. And also the fact that it was mentioned that UEFA's sort of it left it long enough that the charge wasn't relevant, that they couldn't basically, the statute of limitations on UEFA's own rules had basically excluded them from being able to charge City anyway, or effectively put the ban in place. So I think when we get these written reasons, we'll sort of learn more about whether it was that statute of limitations that really did cost UEFA, because if that's the case, then effectively City haven't been exonerated here. They've been found guilty and got off on a technicality. But at the moment, I am just speculating, and we will have to wait for those written reasons, because there is every chance they come out and they do completely exonerate City, and CAS have found that UEFA's case was completely flimsy to begin with. But it'll be very, very interesting to see those.
It is interesting because I don't think UEFA have come out of this in any way a good way. People are looking at them going, is this ridiculous? Like you've said, the statute of limitations on a charge that they're bringing to them under their own law, which is insane. It's mad, like, to think that UEFA are trying to charge Man City with something without checking their own law and a statute of limitations. If that's the case, Chris Brack says 10 million for being obstructive. So if you've nothing to hide, why are you being obstructive? It's a very fair question. But when I look, David, are you surprised by this? Because we done a show on Sunday night, and of course the decision was due on Monday morning, and I think two of us said a year ban. I thought he'd get away with it because I never seen City declaring innocence. I just seen them basically going, well, no, this is not right, and the way you got your information wasn't correct. And apparently the way the emails that were leaked, basically City have told CAS that, they were misinterpreted. It all seems a big mess. But when you look at the reaction of Mourinho and of Klopp, do you think a lot of clubs in the Premier League are going to be very upset by this, because they've probably planned for City are getting done here and we can plan on that landscape, but now it's back to, well, have they got the freedom to do what they want now?
Yeah, I think managers will be upset about it. I know in Liverpool's case in particular, the FSG will not be happy about this at all, in terms of they have spoken so regularly about how important financial fair play was to them in the terms of their decision to get involved in Liverpool. And if they're going to end up involved in a sort of financial arms race with the likes of Manchester City, they know they can't win that battle. So that is, they've got every reason to sort of be upset about this. I think it was interesting that both Mourinho and Klopp took the line that they did today, in terms of not just saying, oh, well, fair enough, City have been found not guilty by CAS, or they've been exonerated by CAS. They both sort of doubled down on the idea that, as far as they were concerned, City had cheated, and they hadn't at least, acted in the spirit of the rules that they signed up to. So, yeah, I think managers and, club owners will be frustrated. It was, with it being Tottenham and Liverpool, the two who've spoken in terms of most high profile today about it, that was interesting, as they're two clubs who are very much running or try to be running a sustainable way. And they're the clubs who sort of stand to suffer if Manchester City are given free rein to spend what they want.
Well, it's interesting because Arteta, the Arsenal manager, had a totally different take on it.
Well, he would.
Exactly. What a surprise there, the way he came out with it. And he was sort of totally the opposite of Mourinho and Klopp. I haven't heard any other manager talk about it today, but I heard Arteta, and it was just staggering, the difference in his tone, being part of probably most of that setup at the time, when the investigation was taking place. And he was like, but the misinformation is still out there. For example, he came out and completely said, sort of, they've been proved not guilty. Well, they haven't been proved not guilty. So, do you know what I mean? I don't know why he said that, and no one took him up on it in the press conference. He said, look, they deserve it on the pitch, and they've been proved not guilty off the pitch. So of course I'm totally happy and accept the decision. But I thought that was quite, staggering. He said that or worded it like that.
There's a couple of other things there, David. As you know, as Mourinho said today, let the circus begin. And there was another question there asking, are the Premier League still investigating them? Because obviously these investigations coincided, and people believe that if UEFA's case against them was upheld by CAS, that it would be the Premier League would have to double down on Manchester City, because CAS can't be saying yes, these have done all these things wrong, and the Premier League going, oh well, it's okay. That's not going to happen. But does the circus begin, David? Because is it a case of, okay, listen, there's probably a technicality, but they know what they're doing. All right, they know what they've done, they know what they're doing, and they can see it, they've seen it, and they just haven't managed, as you said, with a statute of limitations, to put an end to it. Would this make City look around and say, hold on, it probably was a technicality, and we need to probably get our house in order a bit better now, because if UEFA have it in them, they'd probably come back looking again.
Yeah, you would hope that these written reasons sort of offer some encouragement in that regard, so make you feel like that it is almost a technicality, and like you say, that statute of limitations is the reason that City got off. Because if that is the case, then I'm 100% sure that they will feel that, okay, well, we can't get caught doing this again, and sort of they'll have to rein the spending in a little bit, or at least spend within the means to some degree. I suppose that is the only upside, is if these written reasons come out and they do state that basically there had been some evidence of wrongdoing there. Although the initial statement we got was sort of quite hardline about the fact that there wasn't, which was interesting. But if there's a hint that UEFA or CAS had sort of sensed some wrongdoing in there, then that would hopefully sort of rein City in a little bit. And in fact, it could also sort of work in the Premier League's favour in terms of them trying to bring some sort of case against City, because if that evidence of wrongdoing is there and UEFA couldn't sort of push a charge through on the basis of the timing, then I'm not entirely 100% sure about the Premier League's rules around that. But if they've got any sort of room for manoeuvre, I'm sure they would act on it.
Yeah, it's one of those now where we are going to have to wait and see what the Premier League do. Grizz, I want to move it on, because we could talk about that all night, and like David said, we're going to have to see the written explanations with regards to this before we can actually, discuss it again. But moving on, Grizz, there's been a lot of money lost over COVID, coronavirus, and, we're looking at mid-March to basically it's still going on. Games are being played, and and we're looking. I've seen reports saying that Premier League are hoping for a certain percentage of fans in by next season. I don't believe that, but the amount of money lost, Grizz, surely is going to have effect on everybody, not only Liverpool, but sticking with Liverpool as well. It has to have a massive effect on A, the running of the club, and B, the planning in the future. I'm coming around to the thought that this summer is going to be quieter than quiet, to be honest.
I think majority of the fan base has come round to realising or accepting. Well, I say majority. There's still some people out there that want us to sort of go mad. But look, it is what it is. There's not a business. I mean, let's put aside football. There's not a business that hasn't been affected by this. On every level, in every society, on every level, there's business finances have been impacted massively, and it's sort of changed the whole outlook of companies left, right, and centre. And look, as much as we say, and we always discuss FSG or whatever, but to them, Liverpool is a business, and they have to run it as a business, and therefore they will be sensible about it. And one of the things they have to look at is, all this income that has been lost. Add on top of sort of players' contracts. Don't forget, we have practically won everything that we put into players' contracts. That sort of means loads of bonuses. Now that's a good thing, but it's an expensive thing as well. So we're paying off bonuses, new contracts. Unfortunately, there has to be a hit somewhere, and I think the owners have sort of kind of made it clear that one of the avenues that will have to be sort of, downsized is transfer fees for incoming players. Unfortunately, that's the way it's got to be. I do believe, I 100% believe that if it wasn't for this global pandemic, then there would have been 100%. I'm convinced there would have been investment and significant investment. But look, we're part of a wider community, world community that's affected, and we're part of that. Unfortunately, we haven't got sugar daddies a la Roman Abramovich and City, that possibly the only ones, unless the Saudi takeover takes place of Newcastle, that will sort of spend as per. I mean, there's no way anyone else can operate on the same level as them because of the reasons we said. And look, unfortunately, it's just unfortunate. It's mad. It's frustrating. It's sort of disappointing, but it's just unfortunate. I think the timing of it is absolutely, mad for us, because a lot of fans' frustrations sort of comes from at our best we've been, sort of where we've got this new Nike deal where we're on top of the world in every sense, apart from investment in the team. So you can understand that frustration, but I think, a lot of people have got to look past that and sort of deeper into it. And unfortunately, we're in the situation we are now, which I agree with you. It's going to be a very, very quiet summer.
David, is it fair to say, and this might be a very simplistic way of putting it, but unless you're owned by a sovereign state, it's going to be extremely difficult to spend money during this transfer window, and possibly the one after that as well, and possibly the one next summer. And I'd even put Manchester United into that boat, because like you've spoken a couple of minutes ago about how Spurs and Liverpool look to be ran in a certain way, self-sustaining, and Manchester United are self-sustaining. Sorry, even when you take away the Glazer issue, which a lot of Manchester United fans have, with buying the club off loans, taking money out every year, they are still self-sufficient. When you look at it, they're a money-making machine. Is it fair to say that you can probably count on one hand the amount of clubs that can actually delve into the transfer window over the next, the next year? Can you count them on one hand?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, with Liverpool, it's, I've seen a lot of debate about this, and it fascinates me. A lot of criticism of the ownership, people with very short memories. Obviously, this is the ownership who've taken Liverpool from the brink of administration and complete non-existence or potential relegation to lower leagues, and having to become a Phoenix club. To literally the peak of the European game, the world game, in fact, and also there's no doubt about the financial, the way Liverpool run financially. There's no secret about it. They literally release the accounts every year, so we can clearly see that every time there's been a profit, which has been the past couple of seasons, so things have been going well on the pitch, and that's been reflected in terms of the money coming in. Every time there's been a profit, there's been a huge outgoing either on transfers or massive new contracts. As Grizz mentioned about bonuses and things like that. Contracts, keeping hold of your star players is extremely expensive, as is obviously going out and signing new ones like Virgil van Dijk, Fabinho, Alisson, people like that. So Liverpool have been basically, every time there's new money coming in, they've been hitting it straight out. So they've been running at zero, basically on that limit all the time. And then all of a sudden, obviously, the coronavirus pandemic has hit, and that you're immediately then into a deficit because that loss of income in terms of hospitality and gate receipts and things like that. So Liverpool, in terms of transfer spending, like you say, basically your owner would have to decide that they think this deficit is worthwhile, because they can get around the FFP situation. They're going to roll the 2 seasons together. So if you wanted to inject some capital to get things going, that can happen. But obviously Liverpool's owners have never done that, and they're never going to do that. So the fact is, Liverpool are just going to have to tighten the belts for a little bit and have a look and see when fans are going to be back. Other clubs like, Chelsea, for example, their owners they've already got quite a lot of cash reserves anyway because of the transfer they did and couldn't spend. But their owner could choose to inject cash. City could choose to inject cash if they wanted, and be able to work around it with FFP. But it just isn't going to happen with Liverpool. But the upside of that is that the manager is completely on board with that idea. I think we've spoken to him enough times in press conferences and privately to he does buy into this idea. He doesn't think that his football world should be completely separate to what's going on outside of football and COVID and what we're all going through. So it's going to be hard for Liverpool maybe to defend that title next season if City do decide that they're just going to do this massive deficit spend and bring all these players in. But Liverpool, you would hope, will be healthier down the line for not doing it. And I can see why people are frustrated about it, but the reality is there, and Liverpool, one of the clubs who are going to have to face it.
Yeah, they absolutely are going to have to face it. And Grizz, Umar Khalid says, fans only see transfers, but they forget things like the Anfield Road expansion and Kirby training for complex, which I read is going between 50 and 70 million pounds now. But Grizz, the one thing that does for me is, we're not sitting here as a club in 7th or 8th position with a squad that needs 6 or 7 players, and all of a sudden we're being hamstrung by what's happened with COVID-19. We're sitting here as the champions of England, Europe and the world, okay? With, for me, the best team in the world, no doubt about it. Now, you can't argue that City, can, like David says, spend out of this deficit and do something, but I'm fairly comfortable, Grizz, with the fact that you take a hit for a year, okay? You stay with the squad that are so tight, so well knit together, they're so behind each other, and you say, lads, we're going for it one more time. Okay, and then you look to maybe freshen things the following summer. Are you all right with that? Because there's a lot of people out there that aren't, and I think that's coupled with last season when Sepp van der Berg, Harvey Elliott and Adrian come into the club. Are you comfortable enough with going into next season going, yeah, we go with what we have and not really bothered about what anyone else does? I think we have enough to go and do what we've done this season and do it again.
Gav, my opinions sort of look on this. And it's very it's a very simplistic way of looking at it for me, anyway. So look, the situation where we are now is a result of FSG's working model, and Jurgen Klopp being compliant with that working model. Michael Edwards, all singing from the hymn sheet. Now, if that was to continue, and the success was to continue, then there is no other opinion to have on it. We have to trust the owners. We've got no option but to. It's been proven to be successful, and it's brought us to this sort of zenith. I mean, I don't know of any club that would not like to be in our position right now. We're probably one of the best run club, if not the best run club in the world. Simultaneously, we're the champions of one of the hardest leagues after 30 years. Season on season improvement, points tally wise, position wise, everything wise. Our squad is sort of at a very good age. The peak of most of the players are at the peak of their careers. I sometimes can't understand what fans want after that. What more is to sort of want from your club? Now, saying all that, there is an understanding. I do understand some of the frustrations because David said something, and I don't want to sort of stop him in mid-sentence because that would be rude, David. But what David said, our owners have never done that and won't ever do that. Now that would be concerning to some set of fans, saying that, well, why wouldn't they ever do that? Surely the strategy they've sort of evolved and sort of made successful for us has brought us this far, but then surely there's another strategy to maintain our levels and to sort of further improve our levels. Would they need to change their strategy sort of going forward once let's say this global pandemic sort of situation dies down and finances get back to normal, crowds come back in, we have this fantastic supposed lucrative night deal that we haven't received a penny of, by the way. A lot of people forget that. It's based on sales and there is no sales at the moment. So, people think far, far too ahead and simplistically. But there is a thought to say, well, FSG, would they consider changing their working model? Because there's always scope for improvement. And that's the only concern I would have, where I would sort of join the legions of Twitter army that are sort of on the likes of David's case every time he puts a tweet out about not spending.
I'm going to do it next week. I'm going to watch all his tweets next week.
Would they consider it, and should they consider it, to change the working model to maintain Liverpool's stay on sort of competitive levels of the likes of City and not be drawn back into sort of fighting for top 4 every season? That's the only slight concern that FSG are so stuck in their ways that this is their working model, and regardless of whatever happens, that is what they will continue to do.
Chris Brack has a question for David. He says, does David believe if they get the desired fees for fringe and loan players that FSG would use this to pay for incomings? Do you think that's something they would look at, David, or do you think, if they got, for argument's sake, got rid of 3-4 players and raised 30 to 35 million pounds, that would just look to be put against the deficit, or look to, buy one player over, Thiago, for argument's sake?
Yeah, I can't imagine that they would sort of take the decision to weaken the squad just to sort of cover the debts. I don't think there's any sort of thinking like that. Obviously, FSG not necessarily wanting to put their own money in, but I think things like that, if Jurgen Klopp is going to, for example, Dejan Lovren and Xherdan Shaqiri, these are two players that Liverpool still seem quite keen to move on this summer, which I find interesting on the basis that they obviously believe that there is a market out there for players like that, and that they can get a fee which they deem is acceptable enough for them to allow them to leave, because they have a choice there. To Xherdan Shaqiri, okay, we know you didn't play much this season, we know you've had injuries, and we know it's maybe been a frustrating time for you at Liverpool, even though you've won quite a lot, you've not really featured as much. They could say, give us one more season, this post-COVID environment, we're really struggling. But they still seem to think that they can get an acceptable amount of money for him, which to me suggests that they also believe that then there is an acceptable buyer's market out there for them to sort of bring in, some cover at left back, some sort of cover on the wings or something like that. So I think this is one of the things that does get lost in amongst us, saying that it's going to be a quiet summer, or I say we as journalists saying that it's going to be a quiet summer, or Klopp saying that you're going to have to be careful and have a think about things. There could still be transfers in. That's absolutely. I just don't think it's going to be sort of high profile, big money ones. But let's get this right for Liverpool. That's not necessarily a barrier to signing an excellent player, is it? Because you look at Andy Robertson, for example, and the amount they got him from Hull. It's just one example of great work they've done in the transfer market. If they're looking for cover in that position, for example, you can easily see them picking up a young player who's willing to take on that position, has got plenty of potential, and all his numbers suggest he's going to be excellent. So, yeah, I don't think it's going to be a big spending summer, but I do think that the sort of the desire to bring people in, if they can move on those fringe players, is there.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. Like Kieran says, there's no need for panic stations. I see where he's coming from, because this transfer window, I don't even know when it starts and when it ends. Being honest, no. But does anybody know when the transfer window is? The transfer window open? I think it is open, isn't it? Is Timo Werner officially a Chelsea player?
You haven't got a clue when it ends. Is the current status, the situation? Yeah,
I think you're probably looking at somewhere around the end of September. I mean, if they get the next season of the league off the ground in the early weeks of September, you're probably looking at the end of September. So I'll wait until David tells me on the eve of the window closing that Liverpool are signing nobody to rain abuse down on them, and then realise that that's when the window ends. But just a couple of things people have mentioned in the chat. And one of them is Gini Wijnaldum, and there's a lot of going. Two players I was thinking about this week. One was Lovren that David's mentioned, Grizz, and the other one's Gini Wijnaldum. There's been a lot of mixed reports on Gini Wijnaldum, and the whole Degsy Lovren stuff about extending the contract and stuff like that. They have an option to extend till 2022, and it looks like they may take it up. What's your feeling on both of them? Because it's dragging out a little bit for me now for Gini Wijnaldum.
Gini Wijnaldum, it's just crazy, isn't it? It's you. The more you think about it, the more you think, why hasn't it been resolved? You think you start to think, is there an issue there? And then when you hear about sort of the links to Thiago, you think there may be something brewing, sort of one decision being dependent on another decision. So. As a member of the squad, as an important member of the squad, you don't like losing one of the most, I'd say, improved and sort of most tactically astute players in your squad, and that's Gini Wijnaldum. You definitely don't want to lose a Gini Wijnaldum on a free transfer. FSG wouldn't like that. But the fact that it's going into his last season, he's free to talk from January, isn't he, to other clubs? Would I be right in that, David?
Yeah. Right.
that doesn't leave a big window for a decision to be made. And as I said, I truly think that decision could be sort of, swayed one way or the other on the situation with Thiago if we were to sort of go for that. With regards to sort of me wanting to lose Gini, again, what David said earlier, in no way would FSG or Liverpool, more importantly, Klopp and Edwards, want to lose such an important player without being replaced. It just wouldn't make sense on any level. So I'd like to think if Gini wasn't signing, which I personally believe he will, he would definitely need to be replaced. And so therefore, this sort of idea and notion of no signings is too early to sort of moan about it. It's too early to panic about it. As we said, even Klopp's alluded to it, that, we don't even know when the next season starts. Like, the man himself has said that. And so plans are up in the air. I mean, and we're probably the most sort of carefully planned club around, especially in terms of recruitment and, what we look into and what we plan our recruitments sort of years in advance. So it's thrown everything up in the air. So it's so difficult to sort of, think what Liverpool strategies sort of week by week almost. We hear different sort of, ideas and plans. So look, if Gini may come to a stage where he probably sees these, rumors and says, just like we hear about Thiago's camp saying he wants to try something new. Not that we've heard anything from Gini's camp that he wants to try something new, but, he's getting to that age where he needs to play every week. Maybe he still has memories of Jurgen Klopp not picking him for Barcelona. And, we saw his reaction where he said, I was really angry, one of the biggest games.
I'd say he got over it, Chris.
Yeah, well, you never know. But look, as a fan, I would not like to lose Gini, especially in a free transfer. But it will be interesting, and I don't want to throw the cat amongst pigeons, but it will be interesting if we got a fee, sort of, as you said, if someone saw a market and gap in a market and said, we'll give you 20, 30 million for Gini, would that be sort of, viable? Would FSG think that makes sense? Last year of his contract, he's been a brilliant servant. Can we use that 20, 30 million sort of maybe to bring an alternative forward in? Maybe, I don't know. So, I wouldn't want to lose Gini personally. I think he's a fantastic squad member and, and one of the most important ones for me personally.
David, there's a question here from Sean Lawson. He asks, is there anything definitive on the move to Kirby? I presume there's some sort of delay on that because, with everything that's happened with COVID-19, nearly everything has, ground to a halt at a certain stage, but has most definitely been delayed. They can't be on track for the expected date on that, can they?
No, well, definitely not. Obviously, there was that big gap in construction, so the idea was to move in over this summer, so way beyond in terms of that. The question is, I suppose, is there a possibility that they might move in for next season, given the fact that next season possibly starts in late August, early September? It hasn't been ruled out, but again, so much up in the air. Sean uses the word definitive, which is just an impossibility at the moment in terms of reporting on anything because there's so much uncertainty around Liverpool. Obviously, they'll be keeping an eye on how things are progressing with that and speaking to contractors regularly, but we really couldn't say when they're going to move there yet.
Yeah, it's look, it's just something that's going to have to happen when it happens, I suppose. And no one's ruled out a second spike in this pandemic either. So you can't. It's very hard to plan. And I suppose we're talking about loads of stuff here tonight that it's very, very hard to plan. And even like Shawnee's looking for definitive stuff, it's not going to happen. And I think trying to be definitive about anything in the next, I would say, year of football, I think is going to be extremely difficult. Davey, you touched on Jurgen Klopp being very comfortable from what you've spoken to him in press conferences and privately and stuff like that. He's very comfortable with the way, FSG run things, the way the club is ran, the people he has around him, the structure he has, and the outlook looking forward, all that sort of stuff. When it comes to the squad he has, and I'm only asking this because we've touched on Gini Wijnaldum, we're looking at Dejan Lovren. Is he extremely comfortable in that as well? Does he ever get tetchy when certain players I mentioned about leaving or coming in? Is he always comfortable around that as well?
In terms of happy with what he's got in terms of his options, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, I think you know what he's like. Behind closed doors, he's not any different to how he speaks when he's speaking publicly in press, in terms of how much he goes on about it. He loves every player in this squad. Even your fringe players who are maybe, Divock Origi, for example. I know he's a cult hero at Liverpool, a bit of a club legend actually for what he's done in the past few years. But obviously, when he plays, he maybe gets quite a bit of criticism from some supporters. But Jurgen Klopp couldn't speak more highly of him whenever he comes in. He had the game the other day. Him and Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain didn't play particularly well, and there was some criticism directed at them. And Jurgen Klopp was very sort of forthright in terms of defending both of them. And that is not to say, obviously, that he wouldn't be looking to make changes this summer. It's like we said, if the opportunity to do that comes up, for example, Divock Origi is another good example of a player who, if an acceptable offer came in, he might think, okay, I want to go and play more football, start games more regularly. Liverpool might look at the price and think that's acceptable. We could maybe get in a replacement, a younger player who's more comfortable playing on the wings, perhaps, because I think that's something Liverpool do like is a direct sort of replacement for Salah or Mane on either side. He's that sort of thing. So, he's happy with what he's got. If he has to go another season with it, I'm sure he won't kick up a fuss. He won't be ripping up his contract and leaving. But he's always looking for areas where he can improve, and those areas do exist. I think fans all know where they are, and Jurgen Klopp's fully aware of it. But it's just a case of, can they do the deal? Is it possible? And like everything, that's sort of up in the air at the moment.
Just staying with you, I'm just while you were talking there and talking about the options he has and different players and stuff. The way things are behind closed doors and stuff like that, what's it like for you and others? Somebody asked earlier, who's the biggest diva on the patch in Liverpool, and answered their own question with James Pearson. I think he's right. James, a friend of the show, he's definitely the biggest diva. There's no doubt about it, and he'd be all right with me saying that, I think. But what's it like for you? How different is it for you guys now? Or is the routine the same, or is there more restrictions? I know you do a lot of press conferences over Zoom and stuff like that, but is it getting a bit grating now, the stuff you're having to do in order to cover Liverpool, because you're so used to, going to grounds, being around crowds, being close to people in the ground, talking and stuff like that? What's the differences now?
Yeah, I wouldn't say grating, because I think, I still sort of realised that I'm quite privileged to be there anyway. So obviously, I'm quite looking forward to the Chelsea game that's coming up, the fact that I'm going to be one of very few people in the ground who get to see the trophy lift and things like that. So I'd say maybe great in that. I wouldn't say it's got that bad yet. I'm sort of really still quite pleased to be there, but yeah, the routine is totally different. It just isn't the same without the fans there. The build up, the atmosphere outside the ground when you're walking in. I sit in the press box right on the edge of the press box, so I just we have people coming past chatting to us all the time, and just that atmosphere and what it's like when a goal goes in, the place going, erupting, and the songs and just everything. It's, it really isn't the same. You're not allowed in the ground for as long. So you usually come in, you get your food, have a sit down, chat to all your, colleagues and get all that. And, makes it really good fun, but we're missing out on all that. So that's, a real shame. Just, like anyone really, just can't wait for football to get back to normal whenever that is.
Yeah, I think we'll be waiting a little while. Grizz, there's plenty of stuff coming in here about players that Liverpool should be looking at, or maybe suggestions. Somebody's mentioned Aubameyang, other people have mentioned Origi, and maybe Adama Traore.
Origi would be good for us, yeah.
No, what he means by is the possible deal for Origi to get to leave the club and maybe go to Wolves with Origi and a few quid for Traore. But I'll put you on the spot, Grizz, and I'm going to do the same to David, but I'll give him a little minute because he's the guest. Do you want to try pick me a player that Liverpool might try signing this summer, with all things considered?
So, look, from reading journalists that we trust, like David, got to say that. No, we mean that. Look, we
only until the window's nearly over, and then the abuse rains down. Then,
yeah, he's not.
And he's given us the thumbs up on that, so I don't see a problem.
but look, sort of trying to assess our kitty is just an impossible situation at the moment, right? So reading between the lines and sort of Klopp himself and sort of, as I said, trusted journalists saying that it seems as though we're in a situation, we're in a summer, we're in a window where it has to be sell to buy, then we've got to start looking at how much our players are worth that we've just mentioned. So look, it would be very difficult to sort of put a figure on sort of someone like Origi now. I mean, Origi, when he scored the winning goal in the Champions League final, would probably fetch you 40 million eyes closed if you sold him that summer. You know, he was at his highest. He was at his highest sort of level and everything, value in the market and everything. Now you've got to take into consideration his form, his situation, sort of post-COVID fee. Me personally, I think we'd struggle to fetch 20 million for him now. Now, would that be sort of, suitable for FSG and they think that, look, that's fine, that's a figure that we can work with? You know, I personally think if we had a target in mind, we would sell Origi. Do you remember before this, we were trying to assess players and sort of we could raise 100 million easily. Sort of Wilson, Origi, Shaqiri. Let's not forget Karius. Who else was there? There was sort of, I can't think of anyone on the top of my head now, but there was about 5-6 players that we know. Grujic possibly. So you're looking at players that sort of could fetch us 20 million each easily. But then we think, as David says, do we think that will go all on the team, or will that sort of would those fees be used to cover sort of the costs and expenses involved of this pandemic, and how much would be invested in the team? If you ask me, the most important area of the team that needs sort of strengthening would be cover for Andy Robbo and a forward that's flexible, that can sort of work his way in the front three position. Not necessarily a winger.
So that's two. So I'll ask you this question. Can you see 2 players coming into Liverpool this summer?
I can most certainly see 2 players coming in this summer. But I'd expect the fees, and that's what probably sort of starts fans off when you start mentioning low fees. For some reason, they equate high fees into high success. Well, no, it doesn't work like that. We've got so many examples that we could go through. But I'd say a cheap understudy to sort of Andy Robertson. I mean, you know, I know Jamal Lewis has been sort of heavily scouted from, you know, people I've spoken to. Jamal Lewis is very, you know, definitely one of the guys that's been sort of highly thought of. But again, this was pre-COVID. Would we go back to this situation? With regards to wide forwards, you know, it's an absolute guessing game now. I mean, you know, it's pretty much covered. We've covered the Werner stuff, the situation. If we weren't prepared to sort of not only the fee but the wages and the agent fee, which totaled something around 107, 102 million. If we weren't sort of prepared to pay that package, then we can rule anything like that out. Unless we sort of manage to get the required fee for Grujic, the required fee for Shaqiri, Wilson, you know, which is unlikely because, you know, we've got to be real when it comes to selling as well as buying. If we're going to be real when it comes to buying, we've got to be real when it comes to selling as well. So look, a total guess right now, I'd say we'd probably bring in an understudy left back, a cheap one, like a Jamal Lewis. I think we hold fire on a wide forward. I really do. I think we hold fire. This is just my opinion based on everything that's just. And I think we wait late as possible in the market, in the window, to see if there's something worthwhile. And if there is, I think we do that. And if you're asking me to, I think you're veering towards a name. I know you are because I know you very well.
Whatever you want.
I think Thiago is a goer, as I've told you before as well. I think Thiago could work for us.
Good stuff. You heard it here first. Thiago signed for Liverpool. Don't be minding all those United links. David, Grizz has mentioned a couple of players there. He's mentioned 2 as the number for people coming in this summer. You don't have to have your journalist hat on here. Just you, as somebody that's looking at the Liverpool squad. What do you feel they may do?
Well, if I was just to say what I felt that they would need to do, or would certainly look to do, is someone who could play left full back and centre back. They would, ideally be someone who was flexible enough to do both. I know before he went to Bournemouth, he looked a lot at Lloyd Kelly, and he would have been sort of absolutely ideal for that role because he, would have been signed as a young backup, but he would have had the chance to get games at left back and also at centre half as well. So that, someone of that profile, if they're out there, is definitely something Liverpool will still be looking at, having missed out on Kelly. So, and then obviously, it's covered in terms of a wide forward, because I just think we've seen enough already of the fact that I just don't think that's the ideal position to be shifting Minamino or Oxlade-Chamberlain into if, Salah or Mane are out. Those two are very much midfielders rather than forwards. So I think, someone to do that on either side. The problem is that you either get someone who's very young, 19, 20, who would be willing to wait for their opportunity. Because I just think if it's someone of, say, Timo Werner's age, that 24, 23, 24, 25 bracket, they aren't maybe as willing to wait for opportunities. And they cost so much more to bring to the club. The wage expectations are higher. I've no doubt if COVID hadn't hit, that Liverpool would have had that deal stitched up now. But unfortunately, that's not how things played out. So, in terms of so I think a left back and some sort of winger comfortable playing on either side. But I don't expect any massive fees. But I also don't think that's a huge barrier to getting in a great player. But a lot of that is obviously contingent on whether they can shift some of the fringe players for the fees they would want. But that is something that Grizz got it perfectly for me. They will have to wait till later in the window to find out what the fee, what fees other players are going for, what they can expect, who they can drive a hard bargain with or not. So I'm not sure we'll be, as soon as the season comes to a close, someone will be signed like that. But we'll obviously have to wait and see.
What we can guarantee, basically, it's going to be a very long summer for David, the likes of David. It's going to be, I'm telling you, it's
going to be ages for me as well, waiting to abuse him, to be honest. But it's I suppose the structure of a transfer today could differ wildly from the structure of a transfer in late September. Let's call it the 30th of September, the window closes, right? So we can have some sort of structure on this. But I think a structure now could wildly be different, from the end of September, when clubs are looking going, oh look, we're behind closed doors for another fucking 6 months and we need this money in now. And okay, we wanted 30 million up front, but we're going to have to take the 10 and we're going to have to take the following 20 over 5 years. There's nothing we can do. It's better than having a player here that doesn't want to be here and is value diminishing every day on day. Now, I know that happens in every transfer window, but it will be magnified at the end of this transfer window because of everything else that's going on outside of the actual football bubble. Dan Jones asked a question ages ago. I left it up on the screen because I didn't want to forget it. He says, can David confirm if they're building a podium in the Kop for the trophy lift? There was a report of this, I think it was Sunday after the game. There was a report there's a podium being built. Are you building a podium in the Kop, David, is the question?
Unfortunately not me personally, but I've heard this is happening, which makes sense to be fair, because that big empty space there, and it'll be I know the club wanted to do something special on the basis that because the fans can't be there, so that I think that will be quite nice, really, to see Jordan Henderson in the Kop.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea because you don't have to do it on the pitch, so putting it in the Kop, and it's a great idea for photo opportunities and footage and stuff like that. Even though there's no crowd there to put a trophy celebration in the Kop.
How they do that though, it's going to be interesting. I mean, I've heard the lights are going to go out and there's going to be like sort of a proper extravaganza show with sort of fireworks and whatnot, but I don't know how it's going to look sort of to the outside world, or maybe I'm just.
You'll just hear me slowly applauding from the press box.
Yeah, I can just hear a couple of claps from David. Yeah. I don't know how they're going to work that, but hey, leave it to them, man.
Yeah. Well, look, it's the one big thing to look forward to towards the end of this season. Lads, the last subject I want to go on to is the actual winning of the league, because I was speaking to David before we come on and we were saying, people think we've won this with a whimper now because of the way things have gone on. They want point records, they want this, they want that. Grizz, I'll come to you first. Just winning the league is it, isn't it? surely the rest of it doesn't matter. Surely the last 3 games, okay, you'll take 9 points and 102 in total. But to be honest with you, if you went out and got beaten every game from now till the end of the season, it wouldn't really bother me.
It would bother me because I'll tell you why. Because of the quick turnover leading into the expected quick turnover leading into the next season. So you'd like to think. So you'd want your team to be in elite sort of physical condition, mental condition. So I don't think losing every single game would quite sort of equip. You know, it wouldn't be the best situation to go into a new season. But generally, Gav, I can clearly say that I'm the eldest out of us 3, and I'm definitely the eldest out of the Trippers, right? And I can tell you this weight it has been mad. It's been an absolute mad. I told you the last time we celebrated, I was but a teenager, 15 years old. Yes, I'll reveal my age. And I told you the way we celebrate. David, you won't know how we celebrated, but the same set of lads that we celebrated, about 10 of us back in 1990, this time round, we didn't know what to do with the excitement and how to celebrate. And so sort of most of us are non-drinkers and it was lockdown and everything. So we went to my mate's farm. We cut up some watermelons and mangoes. We put some chairs around in a circle and socially distanced and just sort of spoke with each other really calmly and nicely and said, wow, 30 years later, so much hurt, so much sort of false dawns, so much expectations and, you know, hopes and everything. And look, here we are now. We've just won the league. So for me, as you say, for the majority of the fans, there's nothing better than winning the league after 30 years. There's nothing better in the manner we've done it as well in terms of being such a sensational team. You know, points records, whatever, they're all lovely. You know, they're all lovely. They don't mean anything to me personally in the long run. But the main thing was this title, and it means everything to sort of people that sort of were alive and sort of witnessed and remember the last title, which was like 30 years ago. So yeah, these records, they're nice. Who wouldn't like a record? Who wouldn't like to sort of be remembered as the team that sort of smashed Man City? Do you know what? I've changed my mind, actually. I've changed my mind. Cancel all that. I want this record. No, David, hear me out.
That was quick.
I've changed my mind.
There must have been the mention of watermelon. I'm buying a watermelon for when we win it next season. Go on.
Do you know? Do you know why? It's this whole City scenario. I want to be remembered. I want my team to be remembered that smashed the record points total from City, who sort of pumped in billions and billions into their club, and we still managed to finish above them in that era. I want to be, I want that record, Gav. Sorry.
Okay.
Forget the rest. Edit it out.
I'll edit out this live video. No problem. Give me a sec. I'm not Paul Daniels.
Oh shit, it's live.
David, take a minute to compose yourself and come up with an answer that you're not going to change halfway through if possible. But for you, the winning the league is just massive for the players, the staff, the management, the club, and the vast majority of the city. Is the points total thing still in your head, or is it just like, no, lads, let's let these lads enjoy themselves? They absolutely deserve it.
Well, I think if anyone had said at the start of the season that Liverpool win the league by 1 point and they'd lose 15 games en route to doing it, I think any Liverpool fan would have taken it no matter what. So, the winning the league is 100% is the main point of the season, and that's been done and phenomenal. And when the season ends, even though there's going to be a small gap, they should celebrate that. I initially said when the title had been wrapped up, and I was talking to someone about the 100 points, is I didn't think it was maybe as impressive an achievement to do it with part of that season coming behind closed doors. I know you still have to win the games, but going away from home is so tough, and that, something Liverpool was so impressive at. So I think, it's unfortunate, but I felt that had taken away from the record somewhat. That said, Jurgen Klopp hasn't been mixing his team up too much. He hasn't been, completely taking chances with his team. We haven't seen much of Minamino, for example. So that points record is still there to be gotten. If they get 3 wins from here, they can do it. So I think while it's there, why not do it? Liverpool can easily win these 3 games, so they should. So and then other people can have the debate about where they stand in terms of the great Liverpool teams. I think just try and get there and see what happens. So, you know, for me, the league will always be the point of this season and the main sort of achievement involved in it. But, you know, why not?
Yeah, why not? I still don't care if we lose every game from now to the end of the season. I'm being honest. I said it from day one that the league title is all that matters, and I have to stick by that. I can't get greedy now, despite you two being very greedy. I'm not going to allow myself to. Although I do agree, I think we can go and beat Arsenal, Chelsea, and Newcastle. To be honest, at 80%, I think that's how good this side is. But we'll have to wait and see. It's been a phenomenal season. If we get the 100 points mark, would we have an asterisk next to the sort of points total? Well, I was a bit disappointed we didn't have an asterisk. I wanted an asterisk, and so much of the merchandise you could have sold with asterisks on it was they were brilliant. But now you can't. But you can just lash an asterisk on. Sure, what are they going to do? They can't do anything to you. Sure. City are going around spending 800 million quid on plants for the stadium, and that seems okay. So I don't see why we can't have an asterisk. Listen, it's been a brilliant show. David, thanks a million for joining us and giving us your time. Grizz, thanks a million for joining us and giving us your time. All I can think now is watermelons, and people have now, because I've mentioned Paul Daniels, are wondering, are you the Trippers Debbie McGee? They can make their own mind up on that. I'm being honest with you. Look, it's been absolutely brilliant. It's been a special show from the LFC Daytrippers. The lads are back at 10 p.m. tonight with the build-up to Arsenal against Liverpool. I think Keith is hosting, which will make a lot of you very happy. Keith's a very, very popular man, and so he should be. He's a top bloke. But look, that's it. That's been us. That's been me. That's been David Lynch, and that's been Grizz Khan. Over and out.